1985 was a really interesting year. A lot of things were happening. Back to the Future came out. This is kind of the underlying theme of my talk today. In those days, hoverboards were what Marty McFly wanted the best. He wanted Doc to bring him back to 2015. We could have a hoverboard. Well, these exist now. They're magnetic. And there's a Japanese company that has a huge slope that's reverse magnetic, and you can hover above it on this board. Now, I don't know about the rocket boots. They look like great skates, though, in a way. So there he is, Marty McFly, October 21st, 2015. And quite a movie in many ways. Okay, late 70s, the emphasis of hazardous waste treatment was based largely on thermal methods with destruction and removal efficiencies, DREs, of 99.99% for organic compounds and solvents. The other really bothersome waste was electroplating wastes, which persist to this day, when there are really easy reverse electrolysis methods that can be used to keep plating baths fresh and ready to go with very little power, yet very few electroplaters even use them. Then in 1976, RCRA changed everything, defining waste as things that were ignitable, corrosive, reactive, or toxic, and made requirements for how much you could keep on your property and just how you would treat those wastes. Having a manifest system made a big difference. The manifest made sure that that waste, when it left your property, was followed by documentation that would come and close the loop on the fact that you had responsibly handled the waste. One of our first projects, led by Jim Gibb, looked at hazardous waste in Ogle and Winnebago counties, two counties north of Illinois, near Rockford, Illinois. Winnebago County, where Rockford is, much more industrialized and larger. Ogle County, largely rural. And yet, both of them had confirmed amounts of hazardous waste, and we were looking specifically at the potential impact on groundwater. Total production of hazardous waste in Illinois between 1980 and 1920, about 70 million tons. And various estimates on this graph show that, and still around, somewhere between 2 and 3 metric tons per year. Early companions and players on this travel, Dr. Richard Carlson, director of the EPA, and later founded Carlson Consulting in the Chicago area. Roy Miller, John Schmidt, and Don Etchison, who later became director after Mike Whitty. Illinois Hazardous Waste Task Force, Philip J. Rock, and then various players from the Water Survey. Some of them are represented here today, Craig and a few other people, Tom Holm. We weren't alone. The scariest part was walking the halls of Springfield. Without a doubt. July 1984, we had Illinois Hazardous Waste Task Force hearings. In 1983, Mike Whitty gave the go-ahead to a start. The first report that came out from the Hazardous Waste Research Center was basically, what are we? What do we want to look like several years from now? Then in '84, we did a hazardous materials laboratory feasibility study. And then we're joined by the Research Advisory Committee, Karis Cartwright, Bill Frericks, Jim Gibb, Bob Gordon, and Jim King. We came out with a plan for the hazardous waste site. Buildings 1 and 2 in the lower left were office space and laboratory space. Building 3, and to this day, this building exists, where we could receive, handle, and prepare hazardous wastes for analysis. We were aware of the fact that you couldn't keep these heating and cooling systems together without substantial risk to people. Early history, in '84, some kind of law came out and called it the Hazardous Waste Technology Exchange Services Program. Only 10 lawyers on a Monday morning could come up with a name like that. 85, Dave Thomas was named director. Gary Miller joined him as assistant director. Is Gary here? 89, we finally got the laboratory and buildings kept put together. In 90, we finally had it complete. 94, Senator's Chicago office formed. The research and laboratory were consolidated under the Clean Monitoring Program, absorbed by the Pollution Prevention Program, and the office formerly named Hazardous Waste Research and Information Center changed to the Waste Management and Research Center. There was a lot of name changes going on, as though, you know, you wanted to disguise your Sicilian background. So what's changed? What's changed? This is a report from the IEPA, 1987 to 2013. If you look at hazardous waste generation back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, minus the refinery wastes, you had well over 2 million metric tons per year. That's dropped down to, or 1987 rather, that's dropped in 2013 to less than 50 metric tons per year, which is pretty amazing in a lot of ways. And that's, you know, 75% decline is not something you just blithely look beyond. So what does the future hold? Well, despite the exhaustive investigation started with Hazardous Waste Research Center Report 1, Industrial Waste in the Calumet City Area, by Craig Colton. Just this past March, EPA proposed the addition of Aztec General Chemical Company to the NPL, 150 Marble Street, Calumet, Illinois. Aztec manufactured, stored pesticides, a lot of chlorinated pesticides, in fact, on a 27-acre site from 52 to 69. In the 80s, General Motors Wrecking, that's an apt name, disposed of demolition construction debris as well as auto fluff, shredded auto parts like the dashboards and seats and all that stuff. Some of these parts were up to 20 feet in depth on the site. Calumet City is was a very marshy area, and so it was a ready receptacle for a lot of materials from the steel industries and other industries in the area. 1999, EPA placed a 6 to 12-inch soil barrier over the site, the value of which is beyond me. So what do we look at? Amounts and types of waste are going to grow substantially in the next 10 years. The UN predicts 20% of the population will grow to 8 billion in the next 10 years. That population weight is going to put severe strain on the earth. 97% of the growth will be in Asia and Africa, and the gross domestic product per citizen may grow by 4 times by 2050 to about $40,000 a year. And that's an estimate by Jeffrey Sachs. And the waste volumes are going to go up. Waste composition is changing. Urban food waste may increase by 44% between 2005 and 2025. Methane emissions from landfilled food waste may increase by 34 to 48 million tons, sorry. Landfill contributions of methane emissions may rise from 8 to 10%. As far as composition is concerned, electronics, nanomaterials, personalized goods are also a growing contribution to waste streams. And these mad individuals that have to have a new phone every year. So some person in India can throw it into a barrel of hydrochloric acid and leach out the metals from the circuit boards. Well, what does the future hold? Between 1995 and 2007, exports of waste to Asia have increased 10-fold for waste paper, 11-fold for plastic, and 5-fold for metals. In the Netherlands, incineration is 4 times the cost of shipping the same waste to Asia, albeit illegally. Not to mention plastic in the ocean. They estimate that in the North Pacific Gyre, there's probably over 1 million tons of plastic floating around, largely generated in Japan, China, and the U.S. Global cooperation, needless to say, is going to be extremely important. And as one looks to the meetings in Paris coming up, international approach to global climate change is going to be paramount. I contend that who we are is what we leave behind. You leave a mess, you're a mess. There's a paper that came out in October in Environmental Science and Technology, Impact of Pollution Prevention on Toxic Environmental Releases from U.S. Manufacturing Facilities. Very interesting paper. They calculated that between 1991 and 2012, 5 to 14 billion pounds of toxic releases have been prevented, largely by amendment of process streams, modification of starting materials, and management to minimize waste generation. Thank you very much for your invitation. I appreciate it.